Hello everybody, this is TipTop MTG here today with another Magic the Gathering video. In today's video, I'm going to be breaking down every single spoiler that was released today, that being September 2nd, for Zendikar Rising. So we're going to talk about the main set, we're going to talk a little bit about expeditions, and generally I'm just going to talk about the cards, tell you what they do, and give you my overall thoughts on them. Why don't we jump right into this? Starting off, we have Prowling Felidar. It's a 4-cost white creature, cat beast, 2/3 with vigilance, and whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So yeah, this is going to be a creature that you're going to play, and as the game progresses, it's going to get bigger, which is really good in like a limited environment, especially where as the game progresses, oftentimes the biggest creature wins. And so if you're not, say, drawing your biggest creature and you're just drawing lands, well, those lands are kind of turning into your biggest creature. And yeah, just these strategies where landfall is being used to boost power can be very, very, very aggressive and can lead to a really quick, limited environment. So we'll really have to see when the main set is, fully spoiled, how many of these type of effects there are, and if that is really going to be a viable strategy and limited. But again, I just like this card even, outside of the set's kind of theme, even if you're just putting a counter on it to keep up with all the other creatures. Next we have Resolute Strike. It's a 1-cost white instant, and it says target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. If it's a warrior, you may attach an equipment you control to it. So this is really good in any deck that has equipment, especially a deck that has cheap equipment that costs a lot to equip. Colossal Hammer is a card that is rotating out of standard, but say in historic, this could be a, turn 2, give something +10/+10. So that is pretty crazy, and I am excited to mess around with this card. Next we have McKindy Ox. It's a 5-cost white creature ox. It's a 4/4, and whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, tap target creature and opponent control. So just a very nice effect that, in limited, again, will be very useful. When looking at the commons and some of the uncommons of a set, you really would just want to look at them from a limited perspective. But again, once you get into the uncommons, there's a pretty high chance that some of those are going to become playable, and there is the occasional common that is playable, but generally the commons are in here for draft. Next we have Core Blade Master. It's a 2-cost white creature, core warrior, 1/1 with double strike, and equipped warriors you control have double strike. That is pretty crazy. I mean, giving double strike to your creature is a pretty big deal, and in a set that is going to be full of warriors and equipment, and this being an uncommon, I would not be surprised if, having big creatures that with equipment and this card is not, that could be an actually viable thing. Because, well, if you're equipping things to creatures, you are generally going to be boosting their power and toughness a lot, which means the double strike will be even more effective than normal. So, yeah, I think that this is a pretty awesome, and I almost want to say overpowered card. We have cards now that are just 1/1 for 1/1 for 2 double strikers in white. So this is just really good. Next we have Kitesail Cleric. It's a 1-cost 1/1 creature core cleric with flying, and whenever Kitesail Cleric enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, tap up to 2 target creatures. So if you just need it as a 1/1 flyer early on, go ahead. If you need to tap some things, go ahead, do that. Kicker, it's very rare that I don't like a kicker card. Even if the kicker seems way overcosted, which we will see a couple of those today, it's an option. As long as the original card isn't completely garbage, I'm fine with it. So a 1/1 for 1 with flying and white, yeah, that's fine. Next we have Ameria Captain. It's a 4-cost white creature, angel warrior with flying and vigilance, and when it enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on it for each creature in your party. So at its worst, this is a 4-cost 2/2 flying vigilancer. And why I say that is because when it enters the battlefield, it itself is a warrior, so your party will be at least 1. But if you have something else, the issue I have with this card is in order for it to be a 4/4 for 4 with flying and vigilance, I mean, fine, a 3/3 for 4 with flying and vigilance, let's say that's a fair creature. You need to have one other creature on board, and that may not happen. So it is a little inconsistent, but I'm not sure how well this would do. I really think there needs to be better payoffs for parties than this, because at its best, you're getting a 5/5 for 4 with flying and vigilance, but that's assuming that you already have 3 other creatures on the battlefield that are very specific classes, and if that's the case, you may already be winning, so yeah. Next, we have Sejir Shelter. It's a 2-cost white instant, and target creature you control gains protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. or you can play the land side, and it enters the battlefield tapped, and you get to tap and add white. So, yeah, I really like this. If your opponent... I guess one issue I have with this card is that something like Sejir Shelter is something that, unlike other cards with this, you cannot just say, oh, I'm not going to need this. There's a high chance that every game you need that the ability on the left. So, this becomes less of a, hey, I don't need it for this matchup, and more of a, hey, I need the land. So, this one is played a little bit differently. I think it'll be good, but it is slightly different than some of the other ones where it's like, well, I don't need this effect, and I know I don't need this effect, versus Sejir Shelter is a very reactive spell. You won't know you need the effect unless you're playing against, say, I don't know, in Historic Azorius Auras, which is known to not run removal. Then maybe you do that, but the protection from color is still really nice for, like, saying, blocking a 30/30 lifelinker. So, lots of, it's a little different. This one relies less on, oh, I need the left side, more on, oh, I need the right side, which is fine, it's just different. Next, we have Skyclave Cleric. It's a 2-cost white creature cleric, 1/3, and when it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life. Then, it is a land, and it can tap. It enters the battlefield tapped, and it can tap for white. I think this card's actually really good and could see some play in some competitive control decks. Mostly because, think about it, it's a land, so you could put this kind of in a land slot. And yes, now you have one land that is entering the battlefield tapped. But if you're a control deck, you may be able to afford to play occasionally a turn behind. Maybe not every turn, so you may not want to overuse these. But say you were to replace one plains with one of these cards. Well, now you have one plains that enters the battlefield tapped, but it has the option to be a 1/3, which is a huge blocker in terms of, just blocking lots of the little threats that we have now, and you're going to gain 2 life, which are both very stally things. So I would not be surprised if we see decks run maybe 1 or 2 of these in their deck. So yeah, I would not be surprised if we see that. Next, we have Maul of the Skyclaves. It's a 3-cost white artifact equipment, and when it enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control. So you're going to pay 3, and equipped creature gets +2/+2, has first strike and flying. Now, if there was a 3-cost aura that said equipped enchanted creature gets +2/+2, flying and first strike, what would that look like? Because that's essentially what this is, because it auto attaches. And I think that would be a really awesome aura, but the thing is, this is even better, because once the creature that this is attached to dies, you can still re-equip it to something else. So I think this is a pretty good equipment, and I expect there to be a lot more equipment moving forward, because if you look at what Standard has to offer, it is very limited. Next, we have Arca Priest of Iona. It's a 1-cost white creature human cleric, star 2, and its power is equal to the number of creatures in your party. It itself is a cleric, so at its worst, like ignoring everything else about the card, this is a 1/2 for 1, which is not awful for white. But it also has other abilities. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you have a full party, target creature gets +1/+1 and gains flying until end of turn. So, if you have a full party, meaning you have 3 other creatures, this, 3 other, a wizard, a warrior, and I'm still learning these, rogue. If you have one of each of those, he is going to be a 4/2, and you can then give him +1/+1. So you can become a 5/3 with flying for 1. So yeah, I think that if you're running a party deck, this definitely goes in it. It has a nice payoff, it is a cleric, and it's cheap, which means that if your opponent does have to remove it to, say, remove your full party, they're probably using more than 1 mana to kill it. So I really like this. Next, we have Skyclave Apparition. It's a 3-cost white creature core spirit, 2/2, and when it enters the battlefield, exile up to 1 target non-land, non-token permanent you don't control with converted mana cost 4 or less. So you're going to exile something with 4 or less, and when it leaves the battlefield, the exiled card's owner creates an XX blue illusion creature token where X is the converted mana cost of the exiled card. So unlike the typical effect where it's going to exile it and then return it once the thing dies, it's going to return a creature with its equal to its CMC, which I think is a lot more interesting and a lot more powerful, actually. I mean, a lot of the time you're not exiling something because, oh, it's a big creature. You can, but a lot of the time you're exiling it because of an ability. Let's think about it. Even going up to things like Ghalta, right? Ghalta's a 12/12, for 12, but you normally don't pay that. But with this, yes, you can't exile that. But say you could, I'm just using this effect as a general example. A lot of the time, especially with CMC4 or less, you are exiling something because of an effect. So this kind of is a permanent removal. So that's really awesome. It also gets rid of hydras pretty easily. Anything that is just an X in the cost, like Stonecoil Serpent, this answers it perfectly, because you basically just pay 3 and exile it and get a 2/2. Because yes, they will get a 0/0 blue illusion creature token, but that will not stick around. So yeah, I really like this card. Seafloor Stalker is a 3-cost blue creature merfolk rogue, 2/3, and you can pay 5, and it gets +1/+0 until end of turn and can't be blocked. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each creature in your party. I don't like this card. They play a 1/1 for 1 that can't be blocked. Like, those are a thing. I don't know if there's any in standard at the moment, but paying 5 is way too much, and relying on other things to bring down this cost is a little ridiculous. Now, obviously, this effect actually will only ever cost 4 because it itself is a rogue, but yeah, not a huge fan. Risen Riptide, 3 costs, 0/5, but if you cast a kicked spell, or whenever you cast a kick spell, it becomes a 5/5 until end of turn. So when you kick something, this becomes a 5/5. Do I see a deck built around kicking spells? No, but this is an awesome card in Limited, mostly because your opponent isn't going to expect it. Especially in, like, Arena, where it's very, not easy, but you can accidentally click attack all. They may just be like, okay, I don't block the 0/5, or I'm more worried about blocking, you know, the 2/2, and then boom, 5/5. I like it. Next, we have Field Research. It's 3-cost blue sorcery, draw 2 cards, so that's a divination, but it has more. You can kick it for 3, so you'll pay 6 mana total to draw 3 cards instead. Now, that 3 mana for 1 card is not great, but if you are running divination in any deck, this card is better in every single way. I mean, at its worst, you're paying 3 to draw 2 cards, which is divination. But if you happen to have 6 mana, you can draw an extra card. This is not better in every way like Jace's Triumph is from War of the Spark, where it's very narrow and it's rarely better. It is better in almost every way. So, yeah. Next, we have Into the Royal. So this was a reprint from Commander 2018, originally in Zendikar, but it's a 2-cost blue instant with kicker 1 and a blue, and return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. If the spell was kicked, draw a card. So we have this in Historic right now under a different name, which means there's now 2 of them, but I like the effect. You pay 2, return something. If you happen to have the mana, you get to draw some cards. I really like it, and I actually love the new art. I think the new art is amazing. Next, we have Umara Wizard. It's a 5-cost blue creature merfolk, 4/3. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery or wizard spell, Umara gains flying. Just play a 4/4 for 5 with flying. Why is this so particular? I don't like that. But it does have the advantage of being able to be played as a land. I don't think this is a good card. Maybe in Limited you might be able to get away with it, but outside of that, it's just not great. Next, we have Subtle Strike. It's a 2-cost black instant. Choose one or both. Put a -1/-1 counter. Not -1/-1 counter, sorry. Put a target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn, or put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So it looks like black here is getting a little bit of +1/+1 counter, synergy, and that's interesting to see. So this is kind of just a combat boost that gives your creature 2 power and toughness advantage over another creature, and one of that power and toughness is permanently there. So this is actually a really good combat trick, especially because it's instant. Hey, they swing with a 4/4, you have a 2/2. Well, you block with this, and now you can buff your guy up to a 3/3, and theirs down to a 3/3, and now they're trading. Or maybe they swing with a 3/3, you swing with a 2/2. Dumped theirs down to a 2/2, and yours up to a 3/3. Now they're just losing their creature. So yeah, pretty awesome card. Next, we have Oblivion's Hunger. It's a 2-cost black instant, and it says target creature you control gains indestructible until end of turn. Draw a card if that creature has a +1/+1 counter on it. So you can stop something from dying and then draw cards if it has a +1/+1 counter, which generally, if you're playing +1/+1 counters, you want to have effects that stop your stuff from dying so you don't lose all those resources. Really awesome. Hagra Constrictor, 3-cost black creature snake. It enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters on it, and each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has menace, which is really awesome because your creatures are generally going to be pretty big, and that makes it harder to chump block. Next, we have Gruelled Razz Mucklord. It's a 3-cost black creature crocodile. When it dies, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So again, just more +1/+1 counter stuff. Expedition Skulker. It's a 2-cost black creature vampire rogue, and it has death touch as long as you control another rogue. Cool, but like, why don't you just play a death toucher, like a 2/1 death toucher for 2 with afterlife? I know that's rotating out, but I just don't like this card. I'd rather play a 1/1 for 1 with death touch that always has death touch, unless of course you're going for the party thing, in which this matters, especially in limited. Deadly Alliance, 5-cost black instant. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature in your party. Destroy target creature or planeswalker. Okay, so if you're playing a party deck, there's a high chance this is going in there. I mean, if you have 1 creature out, this is slightly worse than something like Murder, for the fact that it's going to be cost 4 instead of 3, but it can hit a planeswalker, which is useful there. And the second you get 2 of them out, well, now you're just paying 3 to destroy target creature or planeswalker. I think Murderous Rider is a better card, but in a party deck, I could definitely see this being played. It could theoretically be cast for 1. Next we have Thwart the Grave. It's a 6-cost black sorcery, and this spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature in your party. Return target creature card and up to 1 target cleric, rogue, warrior, or wizard card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So you get to return 2 cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. And this is really nice because, say you only have 3 creatures in your party, you're going to pay 3 mana to return, say, the last piece you need for your party, and then something else as well, maybe your party payoff. So I definitely like this card. Next we have Demon's Disciple, 3-cost black creature, human cleric, 3/1, and when it enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. This is like a card we currently have in Standard that is rotating out. It's slightly worse because the other one makes you discard if you can't sacrifice something. Generally, you're going to play this and make it and sacrifice itself, but overall, pretty good card. Next, we have Tabarax, Hope's Demise, which I believe is a new legendary we've never seen before in terms of character. It's a 3-cost black legendary creature, Demon Cleric, with flying. It's a 2/2, and it has lifelink as long as it has 5 or more +1/+1 counters on it. And whenever another non-token creature you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on it. If that creature was a cleric, you may draw a card. If you do, lose 1 life. So, right, whenever another creature you control dies, put a counter on this. And if it's a cleric, draw a card, and if you draw that, you lose a life. So you're going to be drawing cards if it's clerics. Also, this is a cleric, meaning for your party, this is pretty good. You need 5 creatures of yours to die in order for him to have lifelink, and your creature will probably be dead by then, but this is a pretty good creature. It might be fun to build around, or at least have in a cleric deck. Next, we have Nighthawk Scavenger. It's a 3-cost black creature vampire rogue with power and toughness are 1+ star and for power and 3 toughness. It has flying, death touch, and lifelink, which is a devastating combo. With even a 1/3 with flying, death touch, and lifelink for 3 wouldn't be awful. But its power is equal to the 1 plus the number of card types among cards in your opponent's graveyard. There are a lot of I want to have cards in my graveyard for Uro decks, and so there's a chance you have, say, a Fabled Passage, an instant, a sorcery, maybe a planeswalker that was killed, maybe a saga, and now you're up to a 6/3 for 3 with flying, death touch, and lifelink. I love this card. It is awesome. Next, we have Tormenting Voice, 2-cost red sorcery. This one's currently in Standard. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but what I will say is we have a better version of this. We have Thrill of Possibilities, and so maybe this is it's basically the version of that card is it's basically an instant version of this card. Now, I'm not sure why they wanted Tormenting Voice, maybe to have 2 of the same effect, or maybe this is them starting to slowly power down Standard. We'll have to see, but this seems like a weird inclusion to me. Next, we have Ardent Electromancer, 3-cost red creature, human wizard, 3/2, and when it enters the battlefield, add a red for each creature in your party. So, at its worst, you're kind of just paying 2 mana for a 3/2, because it itself is a wizard, which is part of a party. But there's a theoretical chance that if this is your final piece to a party, you play this, you get your creature, and then you end up with actually 1 red mana, if you had 3 lands, for instance, you play this, now you have access to 4 mana, so this can actually kind of ramp you. Maybe you do play this, do some interesting things. I don't know. I kind of like the card. Next, we have Teeter Peak Ambusher, 2-cost red creature, Goblin Warrior, 1/3, and you can pay 3 and give it +2/+0 until end of turn, so it kind of has this fire breathing effect that's a little bit more fair. It's not just 1 red mana equals 1 damage, it's 3 red mana equals 2 damage. So, very generic, very boring, but it's another card. Next we have Concordant Spell. It's a 5-cost red instant. It deals 4 damage to target creature and deals X damage to that creature's controller, where X is the number of creatures in your party. This is way overcosted. If you're paying 5 mana to deal 4 damage to a creature and then at most 4 damage to its controller, but you only do the 4 damage to its controller if you have 4 creatures of very specific types, this card is absolutely awful. Next, obviously, in limited, it may be fine. Inferno Hound of Akum. It's a 1-cost red 0/1 with creature elemental dog, and whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Okay, this I expect to be a very, very powerful card in limited. I mean, a 1-cost, you're probably going to swing the next turn, swing for 2, and then maybe if you have any other boosty ways to put lands on the battlefield, maybe you're swinging for 4 on turn 2. This card is pretty insane. I wouldn't be surprised if it actually sees some play somewhere. Sneaking Guide is a 1-cost red creature, Goblin Rogue, 1/1, and pay 2, tap, target creature with power 2 or less can't be blocked this turn. In Arena Best of 1, we have Goblin Tunneler, which costs 2, and just lets you tap to do that effect. So if you're in Best of 1, there's a better version of this card. If you're not, this is overpriced for mono red. So, yeah. Next we have Grow Tag, Night Runner, 3-cost red creature, Goblin Rogue, 2/3, and when it deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. So interesting, you're going to want to deal damage, you're going to get some card advantage. Pretty decent card, actually, getting you card advantage in red, at least temporarily. Next, we have Spikefield Risks. It's a 1-cost red instant. It deals 1 damage to any target, and if a permanent that was dealt damage this way would die this turn, you exile it instead. So, I could see this being a card where it's like, I'm playing it mostly as a land. Obviously, it has the land on the other side, too. But if I need to exile a creature, or they have like a 0/1 or something that I need to kill, do that. But I would not be surprised if this is occasionally played as I need to exile that thing instead of kill it. Next, we have Akum Warrior, 6-cost 4/5 with trample, or it's a land. Again, I guess maybe if you're fine with having one of your lands come untapped, it's nice to have the option, but I think the card on the left is just too bad. Next, we have Dauntless Survivor, 1/1 for 2, creature, human warrior, and it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter. You may put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So, at its, I guess, worst, it's a 2/2 for 2 human warrior in green. So, not bad, but it also kind of plays into the +1/+1 counter theme. So, it could be interesting depending on how supported that theme really is. Tajuri Snarecaster, 3-cost 1/4 reach elf rogue. The thing to note when you're looking at these is some of these look boring. Like this one looks really boring, and it is. But keep in mind the subtypes of rogue and warrior and wizard and cleric, because those are really important to the party mechanic, which seems to be a nice little added bonus on top of a lot of cards. Next, we have Rabid Bite, currently in Standard, was going to rotate out, but now it's not because it's being reprinted here, but it's okay. I prefer Ram Through from Ikoria. That's very similar, but instant speed. Next, we have Taunting Arbor Mage. It's a 3-cost green creature elf wizard with kicker 3, and when it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, so if you're paid a total of 6 mana, all creatures able to block target creature this turn do so. I mean, and currently, I believe in Best of 1 Arena, there's a 2-drop that just makes everything block it, which isn't the same effect as this, but very similar. This seems slightly overcosted, but again, in like a limited environment, this is amazing, because you can have your big 10/10 or whatever, and then say, hey, you have to block this other creature, and then you can win the game. So in limited, I think it's pretty good as a like kind of a game ender even, but outside of that, I don't see it doing much. Next, we have Kalini's Ambush. It's a 3-cost green instant. Target creature you control fights target creature you don't. It is a little expensive, but again, I like this kind of, hey, I don't need to kill anything, let me just play a land instead. Or, oh, I need a land, I could have used the kill spell, but the land's more important. I like this card, I could see it seeing play. It's a little expensive for a fight spell, but it is instant speed, so it has that going for it. Next, we have Bala Ged Recovery, 3-cost green sorcery. Return target card from your creature. Return target card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and then you can obviously play it as a land. I like this card. Again, it's a very, oh, I need my card back, or no, I don't need any cards back. I'll play it as a land. I like this. Next, we have Swarm Shambler. It's a 1-cost 0/0, and it's a fungus beast, and it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. So 1/1 for 1. But whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it becomes the target of a spell, an opponent controls, create a 1/1. So if your opponent tries to kill one of your creatures with a 1/1 using a spell, you get a 1/1. Sorry, if an opponent targets something of yours that has a counter on it, a +1/+1 counter on it specifically, and you have this out, you'll get a 1/1, which is nice, and you can pay 1 and tap and put a counter on Swarm Shambler. The issue with this is, yes, you're getting a 1/1, but you're losing all those counters. It's not doing anything to prevent it. Obviously, it's nice to have, but I don't know how powerful this is. For being 1, I guess it is pretty powerful, but generally, they're just going to kill this. Now, it does have the ability to pay 1, tap, put a +1/+1 counter on Swarm Shambler, so it can slowly get bigger, which is nice with your leftover mana. So just for that, I think it's a pretty good card, but we'll have to see how this whole +1/+1 counter theme goes in Golgari. Next, we have a really interesting card. It's Ayesha, Soul of the Wild. It's a 5-cost green legendary creature elemental, and its power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control. But then it says, non-token creatures you control are forest lands in addition to their other types. So, first off, let's just look at this at face value and not think of too much about this. This is a land creature. There has only been one of those printed, and it actually was a not legendary, but it was a land creature in the fact that it said that on the type line. And then it was a really big rules headache. So to avoid that, they said, and I saw this last week, someone asked on Mark Rosewater's blog, hey, what if a creature entered the battlefield and its ability on the battlefield said that it was a land? Would that be okay for the rules? And then a week later, we get something spoiled that doesn't do that, but it makes all your creatures that are non-tokens forest. Now, what does this do? This does a couple interesting things that you may not think about. First off, it turns all your creatures into kind of mana ramp, which is cool. But it also protects your creatures from anything that says non-land. Banishing Light, exile target non-land permanent. Sorry, I don't have any non-land permanents. I mean, you could have an enchantment or something, but all your creatures are now lands, so things like that don't work. Anything like Cyclonic Rift in older formats that bounces all non-land permanents owned by your opponents, well, all my creatures are actually lands. Obviously, this does mean anything like the Fall of Thrawn from Historic that destroys all lands will destroy your creatures now. It has lots of little implications like that. So keep that in mind. It doesn't actually affect the creatures until they hit the battlefield, but it's an interesting card, and Ayesha is going to be a huge creature, so keep that in mind. For each first off, it's at least the power of your creatures. It's probably at least a 5/5 because you paid 5 mana for it, so pretty good. Next, we have Umara Mystic. It's a 3-cost blue and red creature merfolk wizard with flying, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery or wizard spell, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn. This is very similar to We Dragonauts. I think it's slightly better because this also works for wizard spells, but yeah, we have a card very similar in Standard currently. Next, we have Ravager's Mace. It's a 3-cost black and red artifact equipment, and when it enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control. So again, kind of an aura-like ability. Equipped creature gets +1/+0 for each creature in your party and has Menace. So at its worst, this is paying 3 to give something Menace. Yeah, you really need to be in a party, but if you're in a party, +4/+0 and Menace for 3 is not awful. Next, we have Brushfire Elemental, red and a green for a creature elemental, 1/1 with haste, and it can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, and then whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Again, another really fast card, this one in red and green. Green is going to have a lot more ways to dump things onto the battlefield than red in terms of lands, so I expect this to be very popular in a limited environment where you can just slam a bunch of lands onto the battlefield. Next, we have Utility Knife. It's a 1-cost artifact equipment, and when it enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control. Have you noticed a theme with the equipment? It all auto-attaches. An equipped creature gets +1/+1, and you can equip it for 3. But the reason they're doing that is because the equip costs are all really expensive, and so paying 1 and then, having to pay 3 is really bad, but paying 1 to give something +1/+1, that's not great, but it's also not awful. Next, we have all of the expeditions. So, not all of them. I talked about a lot of them yesterday. So, if you want to see those, check out yesterday's video. But at the time I filmed, they hadn't revealed all of them. Now they have. So, in terms of new ones, we have the Fastlands. So, we only have the 2 on the right, but now we have all 5 of them. So that's pretty awesome. And we have some other random lands. So we have, first off, these two, like, man lands. So they only printed these two, at least according to their spoiler page. So that's kind of interesting. But then we also have Grove of the Burn Willows, which is an interesting card because I believe it's the only one in the cycle. So there's no other in existence, you know, this version of a land, but for all the other colors. So that's kind of cool. We have Horizon Canopy, which is just really weird. They're doing like these one-off lands. I think that is kind of cool, but yeah. And then they have Valakut the Molten Pinnacle, which is, again, just, I don't really have much to say about the card. Whatever, you know, they're legal as, they are legal in that now. Whatever they're worth, it doesn't matter because these are special and they're being printed weird, so no one knows what these are actually worth. So they just know that these are out there. Either way, guys, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed and found it useful. If you did, please hit that like button, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.